Today, I'm going to be reacting to KrakDuk's Imperial Guard, the most important Imperials. Please go support his channel, and the original video will be in the description. Thank you. Welcome to A Christian Reacts. And I do things a little bit differently on this channel, as I react, but I also bring biblical commentary that's pertaining to the lore that's on screen. I also do a Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible series that are shorts. So if you want to check those out, that'll be in the watch page. And I'm going to pay the bills here. So we got W Energy Drinks, who's a sponsor of this channel now. Here's the shaker. This is, well, they got plenty of shakers. But they're made in the USA. So if you want to support businesses in the USA, it's a good chance of doing that. Also, I'm going to put up some flavors here so you guys can see what flavors they have and all that. And my discount code is HisWord247. Or the link will be in the description. All right, let's go ahead and get this started. Put this here. Whoa.
Hi friends, today we're talking about the best faction in all of 40k. Get these super soldiers and existential horrors out of here. I picked that guy. Just a normal ass guy with a gun. Yup, that's what I want.
Yes, sir.
In a world of gods, demons, and aliens, you'd have...
Yeah, as they say, like, without the Astartes, the Imperium would fall within a week. But without the Imperial Guard, it will fall within days. Or something to that extent. Anyways.
To be a spectacular lame-o to pick the normal human faction, right? No! Well, I'm a little lame, but the Guard isn't. These guys are the backbone of the Imperium. Sure, the Marines are the Emperor's greatest warriors and are super cool, but the Imperial Guard are the dudes who actually get down in the trenches, oftentimes literally, and...
What does it say? I don't mean to say Marines. I meant to say the Guard does the majority of the fighting in the Imperial. Oh boy. I can imagine all the hate you would have gotten.
So, if you like a load of guns, glorious mass infantry charges, a ton of tanks, and the unrivaled power of the indomitable human spirit, fix your bayonets and get ready to hear about the best 40k faction. The Imperial Guard began in the Unification Wars as the Imperial Army and were the regular human combatants of the Emperor. Just like...
if you guys could maybe point out some good Imperial Guard books, let me know. Because I would definitely like to read some. I read a bunch of, the Master of Mankind, Deathfire, Reign of Fire, a lot of the Salamander books, but I need to start reading some Imperial Guard books. But anyways, I digress.
Like in 40k, they were the main...
I love Numion, by the way. But anyways, I don't want to get into that.
Fighting force of the Imperium. However, 30k differs in that oftentimes the Guard were directly commanded by Marine legions. So, unlike 40k, the Marines and Guard were essentially one big entity, with Guards mostly providing the numbers that Marines logistically couldn't, and they were often the forces that finished off and defended conquered worlds after the Marines had done their thing. Yup, you heard it here, folks. Marines, they have trouble finishing. Guard is more base confirmed. Of the Imperial Army, the most elite guardsmen of the time hailed from the solar system and were known as the Solar Auxilia. These guys...
All right, might as well bring it in now. Uh-oh, there it is. So, like I said, guys, I do bring biblical stuff, biblical commentary. So I want to talk about the frontline soldiers of God. And they're called the Malak, in Hebrew anyways, or angel, right? Now, a lot of these entities get encompassed as angels, which, yes, you can call them messengers of God, but there's different classes, right? Like the Watchers, Seraphim, Cherubim, the Archons, or the Archangels, right? The top dogs, which, yes, the Archangels are at the very top, not down here like a lot of churches put them. They're up here, right? But anyways, I digress. That irks me. I don't know why they do that. But anyways, this is what it means. Okay, so Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, Ambassador, Angel, King, pay attention to that part. Ambassadors are envoys. So it's not just, there's a class of these guys, which they look, a lot of these guys look like human, but sometimes they don't, right? So it just means a messenger is coming from God, right? Mostly. Until you get to the angel of the Lord. Keep that king mind, or in mind. But anyways, so there you go. Frontline soldiers. And I'll show you
Guys
here
are
in a second
really
too.
cool and really only second to Marines in terms of skill and training. Also, special shout out to Lucifer Blacks, the ultra elites of the Solar Auxilia. These were some of the most, if not the most, elite guardsmen in the setting and maybe ever.
So I know I bring this up every time. But of course, guys, this isn't really taught, so I do bring it up a lot. That Lucifer is a man, right? He's not Satan. It literally calls him a man, right? First off. In Isaiah 14, verse 16, it calls him a man. And then his name, Hillel bin Shahar. Shahar is a Canaanite god. I don't think Satan is the son of a Canaanite god. He is the god, right? So I do want to get that out there since they brought it up. And I also believe he's the beast of Revelation, but we won't get into that.
But anyways, the Guard being under command of the Space Marine Legions proved problematic when half the Space Marine Legions decided to heresy and conveniently had the authority to tell half of the Imperium's army and naval forces to worship Satan with them. So then, the Horus Heresy happened. Primarch this, Primarch that, Siege of Terra, yada yada. After all that crap happened, the Imperium had radical reforms headed by the ultra mega Chad Rabuda Gilliman. Key among these changes were to heavily segment and limit the forces of the Imperium. Famously, the Marine Legions were split into smaller chapters, and a similar thing happened to the Guard. Firstly, the Imperial Army was made into its own entity with its own common structure separate from the Astartes. Next, it was split into the Imperial Guard and the Imperial Navy. In theory, this meant that the Guard could no longer wage its own wars since it could not traverse planets, and the Navy, while having the ability to traverse the galaxy.
See, I knew that they segmented the Astartes, but I didn't know they did that to the Imperials, or the Imperial Guard. So, you learn something new every day. Like I said, guys, I am no lore expert. I just got into Warhammer 40k like 2 years ago, so I'm not your lore expert guy. But I do bring some lore, with the biblical sense of things, but those are in the shorts if you want to check that out. Shameless plug, I guess.
Simply wouldn't have the manpower to wage wars and hold territory. Another precautionary measure was breaking the Guard into relatively small specialized regiments of a few thousand. However, sometimes they're much larger, surpassing the six figures.
I was going to say.
And others, like the super heavy tank regiments, were quite small. It's important to keep in mind for this and almost everything else I say in this video that the Guard is such a huge and wildly diverse faction that there are potentially enormous variations between sub-factions.
All right. So, I want to bring up the foot soldierness of these guys. So, and this is Daniel 10. Daniel's been praying for 3 weeks here, right? And he says it. So, in those days, this is verse 2. In those days, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. He had no, pleasant bread. Basically, he had a bunch of crap for food and whatnot, right? That's what he's saying. So, then, okay, and verse 4. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, which was Hiddekel, then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen. See, a lot of these angels look like men. Okay, I just want to get that out there. Which, in my opinion, I do believe there was an age before this one where Satan fell, started rebellion, all that stuff. These angels could, I'm not saying they are, they could be the humans, the saints of those days, but I don't know. Because the reason why I say that, and I think it's Paul, he says, we will be like the angels, right? Or it might even be Jesus. I think it's Jesus who says that. Anyways, he says that we will be like the angels. So, but I'll have to look that up and get the right information on that. But anyways, so his body was like beryl, and his face is the appearance of lightning, and his eyes the lamps of fire, and his arms is like the feet in the color to the polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, saw the vision. Okay, for the men that were, anyways. So I heard the voice of the words when I heard, oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. And he said, verse 11, and he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, Understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright, for unto thee I am now sent. And when he spoke in the word, I stood trembling. Okay, verse 12. This is where I should have picked up. I'm sorry, guys. Then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day thou didst set thine heart to understand, and chasten thyself before God, thy words were heard, and I come for thy words. But for the prince of Persia withstood me. Remember those principalities? These guys here? Let me go to Ephesians. Have that saved, so it's a good thing. So Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. The gods, right? The fallen angels and other beings like the Nephilim and all that. But against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness, okay? Rulers of darkness of this world, right? Okay. Against spiritual wickedness in high places. So with that in mind, let's go back here. Oh, why did it go down here? Oh my goodness. Okay. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 1 and 20 days. This is not a human, right? This is a quote unquote, God or whatever, a principality, right? Or a mighty one, we'll say. Okay. Withstood me 21 days, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, right? The archon, right? The commander. That's why I said at the beginning that the archons would appear, right? And you see this battle that he wasn't necessarily strong enough to get through this, so he needed some reinforcement from a stronger guy, right? Or you could say kind of like an custodes coming to help like an Astartes or an Imperial Guard if that would ever happen. But anyways, I digress.
Most things are
Sorry, that took
generalizations
longer than
for
I
most regiments. Oh, and also keep in mind that for the Guard, regiment can refer to the subfaction, i.e. Cadian, Mordian, Steel Legion, etc., or it can refer to the regiments within the subfactions, i.e. the Cadian 8th or Elysian 110th. Anyways, though, the most common regiments are infantry, tank, mechanized, and artillery regiments. This means that multiple regiments would have to work together in order to effectively wage war. Only the most trusted and elite regiments are allowed to field combined arms regiments, or in the case of Krieg, siege regiments. Anyways, though, the idea of making the regiments small and specialized was again so that no one regiment could have the power to rebel on a large scale, since they would skew too hard into one thing. However, based on tabletop, an infantry-only regiment probably could succeed, solely based on the fact that any opponent it faces would likely fall asleep during your 4-hour turn 1. In addition to their base regiments, special attachments may be, well, attached to strengthen the regiment. Some common attachments are abhuman squads, heavy weapon platoons, tank companies, psychers, and the coolest units ever, stormtroopers! Woo!
So real quick, I want to bring this up. So this I don't know. I'm not going to say this is artillery or anything like that, but it is interesting. Revelation 8:8. Then the second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and the third of the sea became blood. So, I don't know. Interesting.
Anyways, though, now we know that Guard big, but how do Guard get big? Well, typically, Guard regiments are built up from mandatory planetary tithes. These tithes can vary and are calculated by the Departamento Munitorum, who handles all the Imperium's military logistics. A planet's tithes are calculated based on the planet's size, level of development, what other contributions they make to the Imperium, location of the world, and, of course, with a bureaucracy as big as the Imperium, there's a load of corruption, so how much the government likes you
Yeah, I wonder how many funds get misappropriated. I bet you a lot. I mean, that'd be tough, even with the technology that you have to keep all that in line. Million worlds and trillions of people. Yeah, it's bound to happen.
was also a factor. But finally, another one of the most iconic measures taken to ensure loyalty was the introduction of commissars to watch over regiments, raise morale, offer guidance, and most importantly, enforce loyalty, often with a well placed bolt round. Which
Kind of like the archons, right? But not to that extent. I would consider our archangels like the custodes, but still something to that extent.
also, I think many forget the first two things I mentioned with commissars. Ideally, there are inspirational figures who are elite warriors with a contagious amount of loyalty and dedication. These fellows are trained in the same place as scions and sisters, after all. And since I'm a dumb baby, the nicer inspirational commissars are my favorite ones. But for more unruly regiments, they do have to be enforced, and we get the more brutal commissars. Anyways, though, in the present setting, the Imperial Guard is the single most important military force in the entire Imperium.
I say so. You got to have frontline soldiers. You know, there's only so much the Astartes can do, especially with only 1,000 per chapter. You know, so you need a bunch. You need a huge military force that can hold the lines until the special forces can get in there or whatever. But anyways, I digress. I ain't no military statistician, if I could say that
There
right.
are, and I quote, countless billions of guardsmen fighting across the galaxy. And I'm a pretty sharp fella who can count quite high, so I think it's safe to say there's a whole lot of guardsmen. The Guard is the hammer of the Emperor, and they have been holding the line against any and all of the biggest threats in the galaxy for millennia. They may not be the strongest, the fastest, or the most glorious of warriors, but what they lack in quality, they compensate 1,000-fold in sheer quantity.
Okay. So keep that king in mind, right? About so the strong. Oh, come on. Malak can also mean ambassador, angel, king, messenger. So now we're going to go to the angel of the Lord. Check this out. This is the AI overview. I didn't have to explain this myself. In the King James Version, KJV of the Bible, the angel of the Lord is a figure who appears in several Old Testament passages. Exodus 3 is the most famous one. He comes down in the burning bush, and then 2-3 verses after that, he calls himself God. He says, I am God. So, very interesting. But anyways, this figure is often understood to be a theophany, meaning an appearance of God in physical form, or my belief, right, which Jesus is God, same thing, or specifically a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. The angel of the Lord is not just any angel, but a unique messenger associated with God, sometimes even speaking with divine authority and acting on God's behalf. So let's go back into Malak. Ambassador, angel, king, messenger. So, the king of the Lord. I wonder who that is. Of course, Jesus Christ. So, in my opinion, this angel of the Lord is Jesus Christ. And he's the one that slays 100,000 Assyrians. So keep that in mind too. So, anyways.
Literally nothing in real space is able to tank 300 million last shots with the side of battle cannon. Some people believe that greater demons or other big centerpiece units can only be taken out by space marines or something like titans, but that's wrong. By combining the indomitable human spirit, some good old-fashioned teamwork, and a super heavy shadow sword volcano cannon,
America! No, I'm kidding.
the humble guardsmen can take out any threat they may face. Guardsmen are able to handle nearly all foes through coordination, resourcefulness, and strategy. They don't have the luxury of making mistakes, so
That's
the
for sure.
best of the guardsmen are some of the most competent soldiers in the entire setting. But if competency fails or is lacking,
Well, they're always battling, so they should be. Hopefully, they are.
many dudes will do as well.
Many
It
men.
is a simple fact that Marines have cool guy privilege and get a disproportionate amount
It's a beaky boy.
of stories. But the thing about disproportionate stories is that it's disproportionate. The Marines are an infinitesimal force in the face of the good old Guard. It is outright stated that the Guardsmen outnumber the Marines millions to one. So, even in the most insane stories where Marines can take out hundreds of Guardsmen before
Krieg.
dying, after taking out hundreds of Guardsmen, they would still have roughly a million more to face. And this applies to basically every other faction, as the Guard are almost the most numerous force in a war zone. Even against orcs or nids, the Guard are often the larger organized force. Against orcs, it's rare to see the bulk of the Green Tide being on the same page of anything but fight is good. And luckily for the Imperium, the nids are
Them
seemingly
gits.
not in full force most of the time. Let's just put it this way. If the Marines disappeared one day, the Imperium would have a bad time. If the Guard disappeared, the Imperium would not exist.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to their fighting style. And again, I have to reiterate that the Guard is a wildly diverse faction, so their fighting style isn't the most uniform. Usually,
Well, it's probably depending on what planet you're from, you know, what you've been trained like and all that too. So there's probably different forms. The Krieg, you know, stuff like that. But anyways.
you'll see dudes in flak armor with a las gun and some grenades, maybe with a funny outfit. But also sometimes you'll see some dudes freeballing it. Literally, this is a real regiment at its peak. Point is though, Guard regiments can be
Rambos.
highly unique from one another. For example, you have the highly trained combined arms tactics of the Cadians, guerrilla jungle master of Catachan, drop assault Elysians, mechanized steel legion, and so on and so forth. But generally, most Guard regiments deploy a large infantry force armed with the always trusty lasgun, and the near endless waves of the Emperor's bravest souls are supported by a gargantuan amount of tanks, artillery, and other war machines.
Yes, sir. That's what we're talking about there. I mean, without the tanks, man, they would get slaughtered. But anyways.
So, just imagine hundreds of Lehman Russes shaking the ground with treads and fire, millions of guardsmen charging, blasting lasers and swinging bayonets, all the while getting pounded by non-stop artillery shells blocking out the sun. That is the might of the Guard.
Can you imagine that right there? Man. We're at a rave, boys. Woo!
They are a behemoth that crushes anything in their path through fathomless firepower and sheer will. The most tried and true strategy is to leverage their overwhelming numbers against whatever foe they face and grind them down through insane chip damage. In
Yes,
the
sir.
Imperium, the only truly expendable resource is human life. But this doesn't mean that the Guard commanders are stupid. Far from it. The Guard actually has some of the greatest strategic minds in the entire setting. After all, it takes some skill to defeat super soldiers, ultra tech Xenos, endless armies, and the literal forces of hell with your average Tom, Dick, and Harry.
There's some artillery fire here too. I probably should have brought up earlier. But anyways, I'm going to find that real quick.
These fellas have to take into considerations the weaknesses of the Guard, like generally weaker armaments, morale issues, logistical constraints, and like a million other things. But the best of the Guard commanders know that the Guardsmen are an expendable resource to be spent, not wasted. Yes, countless Guardsmen die in most
Yep.
battles, but commanders often don't just send men into the meat grinder for the lulz. They make calculated and callous sacrifices to win the day. They cunningly coordinate infantry companies, artillery batteries, stormtrooper squads, special units, and sometimes even hidden Baneblades in masterful displays of destruction. However, not everyone is the best, and there certainly are many commanders who do just send waves of guardsmen into
Okay. So this is about Elijah, right? 2 Kings 1:10-12. And Elijah answered and said unto the captain of 50, If I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven, and consume thee in thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven, and consumed him in his 50. This is like broken arrow type stuff here, right? But again, also he sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus hath the king said, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto them, If I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee in thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him in his 50. Artillery fire somewhat. Anyways.
to certain doom with reckless abandon. But that's more the exception to the rule. Otherwise, the Imperium simply wouldn't exist. And
And it's probably it'd be more probably like a Hammer of Dawn type of thing, right? But anyways, who knows?
another one of the coolest, if not the coolest aspects of the Guard is the
If you don't, Hammer of Dawn is this laser weapon in Gears of War. If you don't know, it's a space laser weapon, kind of like Star Wars. Who knows if that's a thing or not? But Star Wars, the program that Ronald Reagan was talking about.
crazy diversity within the faction. Since they are such a huge force and the Imperium has such a wide range of worlds and cultures within, they have a ton of room for interesting variations. In just one faction, you could have a Rambo
Who doesn't say Warhammer 40k isn't diverse?
army, techno Cossacks, sci-fi drop troopers, World War I edgelords, the British. The possibilities are endless. And with the diverse cultures, they've also got a diverse array of fighting styles. You got
The Emperor does not discriminate for or against his fodder.
unrelenting infantry hordes, elite stormtrooper squads, horses, 1 million tanks, and many,
And
many
millions.
more. And the cherry on top is that the Guard Command can and often will mix and match regiments for even more unique forces. It's not uncommon for regiments to work together either out of desperation or because the commander wants to have some fun theory crafting with some silly combos. The Guard is simply the most diverse faction in the entire game and also has the most hobbying potential. Most 40k factions are vast and have differences, but they're still bound by a general theme of sorts. Marines will always look like Marines with potentially different doodads here and there. Necrons are skeleton boys
spiky.
with different colors. Eldar and Tau are pretty standardized. Tyrants are a literal hive mind. And even the kit-bashing darlings, the orcs, are literally genetically predisposed to acting and dressing in a generally samey way. Guard, on the other
That's heresy. That's heresy right there. Ain't no way an orc gonna wear my salamanders.
hand, can go pretty damn crazy style. Once you got humans and with lasguns and tanks, you can basically do whatever you want from there. Sometimes even those are
That kind of reminds me of that AI picture that I put out a community post way back, and it had orc with space marine armor on it. Oh boy, the AI definitely wasn't ready then. It's getting a lot better now, but man. Anyways,
aren't required materials, which bridges me to my absolute favorite aspect of the Guard. They are literally just people, often highly trained and elite people, but just people. These ordinary people regularly conquer horrors beyond their comprehension,
I say
they
so.
brave impossible odds, and they crush foes far greater than themselves. To me, the guardsman who bayonet charges a flaming, sword-toting demon is infinitely more courageous than the genetic freak who literally
Yeah.
can't feel fear. The
I agree with that, man. That takes some cojones to go up against a giant demon or whatever. Even the Chaos Marines. That would be intimidating, right? Going up against an 8 foot mostly tall person. Anyways,
guardsman gazes into the abyss and they shoot the shit out of it.
and by the way, that's exactly what Israel. When the spies they went in right to go scout the Promised Land. That's what Israel or the spies were looking at. They were looking at 10, 13, 15, maybe even 20-foot giants, because it says they were like we were like grasshoppers in their sight. So that's why they were scared to go into the Promised Land. It wasn't like, oh no, green grass, oh no, we can't do that, No, they saw giants there, right? It's because in my opinion, the enemy or Satan knew that Jerusalem was this important spot, right? And the reason why I believe it's an important spot because I believe that's where, the Garden of Eden. So Eden would be kind of like the earth, right? At least in my opinion. And then you got this Garden of Eden, which in my opinion was there around where Israel is, which is why God cares about it so much. That's where he wants to redeem, or where he did redeem with Jesus, right? On the tree. But anyways, I digress. So that's why, in my opinion, Jerusalem is important.
They're badass. In addition, as far as 40k goes, the Imperial Guard is truly humanity incarnate. Beyond looking super
You're not
cool, the
pushing
various
anything.
regiments being inspired by various cultures of the world, and the Guard being composed of anyone who can shoot a gun and yell loud enough, really plays into the idea that the Imperial Guard is the amalgamation of all of humanity. The faction is an inspiring story of all of humanity banding together, sacrificing all that they've got to keep themselves and their fellow man alive. The men and women of the Guard will stop at nothing to keep humanity from the brink of death.
Yes,
And
sir.
if they fail, gosh darn it, they're going to cause quite the ruckus on the way to the grave. Plus, they got a fuckload of cool ass tanks. Badass.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to put
But
a
anyways, that's the Guard for now. I
parental
absolutely love these
discretion
little
advised.
guys. I think they're truly the most compelling faction. I love how much they represent humanity and embody the worst and best aspects. Just
Right.
normal people with a rifle and the indomitable human spirit keeping the Imperium alive. Badass. Plus, the hobbying and homebrew potential is just so fun with them. More so than anyone else, the faction encourages creativity, which is my favorite part of 40k as a franchise. As for what's the best regiment,
Just come up to somebody with a raptor, say hello to my little friend. Anyways, I use that
obviously
joke way too
Circadians.
much. I need to stop.
100% factual jokes aside, though, the most powerful regiment is a debate that hardly makes sense to me, as almost all the regiments we see featured are literally the best and most renowned regiments in the entire Imperium. And even the
They're all
loser guy,
different, too.
no-name regiments are usually composed of the planet's best. But the guys who
And it depends on the planet. Like, you know, are they using jump packs or whatever? You know, jungle guys. You got them word Rambo, right? Barely wearing anything. Anyways, so they're all different.
get book
course.
spotlights and codex sections are the cream of the crop. Probably
And then you got William Wallace right here. Freedom.
like the top tenth of a
Not
percent
really
of the
in the
Guard,
40K
if not
universe.
higher. The average Guardsmen in these famous regiments are probably equally or more competent than our modern special forces. Seriously, the amount of child soldiers in this setting is insane. So, they're all the most powerful in their respective fields. But looping around, Cadia's respective field just so happens to be being the best, so what can I say? But anyways, comment below what your favorite
Moment of silence. Okay.
regiment is, and if you either agree that the Guard is the best faction, or if you're a big old wrong guy. Anyways, though, if you're interested in the Guard, I've got some regiment focuses up, and I plan to make more, so stay tuned. I've also got some cool Guard stickers with more on the way, so check those out.
I will have to do some on the Elysians because there's a place in Greek mythology called Elysium. And it says island where you go and you get rejuvenated, right? And you become like this immortal type thing. But there's many aspects to that are very interesting. But anyways, I digress.
Out too. Anyways, though, thank you for watching, and big thanks to the patrons who help support the channel. You're very epic. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your fellow Guardsmen. Thanks.
You're
Also,
welcome.
I really hate when people say that the Lehman Russ needs to be redesigned with a smaller, more realistic gun. Yeah, sure, let's get rid of the coolest and most iconic part of a cool sci-fi tank in the name of realism. Blech. You make me sick.
This is Warhammer 40k. Why would you? I mean, I get the realism part, but there's war, chaos, all this stuff in this universe. You know, why not? Anyways, so we're going to end it there, guys. I want to say thank you to everybody who supported my videos and supported the shorts that I do. Thank you very much. It's been awesome. And I just want to say, you know, with your favorite YouTuber or whoever it is, if it's me or whatever, be a little bit more proactive now because that's just the way it's moving to. Okay, so be a little bit more proactive and just pay attention to when their videos are coming out. I myself, I'm going to try to get a schedule going, you know, to where it's the same time almost every day, or not every day, but you know what I mean when I bring out a video. But anyways, I digress. I just want to say thank you, and you guys have a wonderful day.